everyone, Slug FPV here. About a year and a half ago, I did a review on the Beta95x HD that I'm showing you here. In the review, I predicted that small FPV cine quads would become more commonplace for videography. So fast forward to present day, and I cannot believe how fast this has become a reality with the explosion of Cinewhoops and cine drones. I would say at least a quarter of the FPV gear right now is related to cine drones, Cinewhoops, and digital FPV systems. For professional videographers, FPV Cinewhoops have become a mainstream piece of a videographer's equipment. An example of this is the professional work that Nurk FPV and Tommy from Umagod have been doing. The FPV Cinewhoops and FPV Cine drones have not replaced the videography drones with gimbals, but are being used in addition to. They can get shots that are difficult, if not impossible, due to their smaller size and agility. Also, shots that require an additional level of safety constraints. You would pick a small Cinewhoop over let's say a DJI Inspire. Let's segue into the BetaFPV Beta95x V2 HD. It is inspired by the Naked GoPro community that have moved to pusher type configurations with naked GoPro mounts. This particular one, I put the Insta360. Once I get the Naked GoPro Hero 6 decased, I will move over to that mount instead of the Insta360. So in the box you get 4 spare props, a screwdriver, Insta360 TPU mount. You get a Naked GoPro case here, the version 2, with a TPU mount for mounting it on top of the quad. You get this right angle USB-C connector for the Vista. You get an Allen key there, and then you do get a back, which is really nice for powering the Naked GoPro, and then you get some screws in here to mount everything. So let's get a weight. It's coming out at 113 grams with the Insta360 mount. If I add an Insta360 on it, it comes up to 131 grams. If I include this 4S 450 milliamp hour Tat2 battery, we're looking at 185 grams. And this is the pusher style frame. It's 95 millimeters motor post to motor post. The flight controller stack is the BetaFPV F405 flight controller with the 4-in-1 16 amp ESC that supports BL Heli 32-bit. The motors on here are the 1106 4500 kV motors. What's nice, they do have a connector which you can just unplug when you need to replace a motor. The props it came with are the GemFan D63 tri-blade props. As you can see, they're kind of a bullnose style. The receiver options you can have the FR Sky XM Plus or TBS Crossfire. I'm not using either. I'm just using the DJI radio. Also, as far as battery types it supports, they recommend a 4S 450 milliamp hour battery, and I really have come to like these Tat2 450 milliamp hour 4S batteries, and it does fit nicely on top here. As far as the digital FPV system here, they do have the Caddx Vista in the back with the Nebula camera on the front. So I have mixed emotions about the Nebula. I actually prefer the FPV camera from DJI over the Caddx Nebula camera, but this seems to be the newer version, which actually seems to be better than others that the older versions of the Nebula camera. So with that, we'll go ahead and I'll show you some flight footage, and then we'll go to the conclusion of whether or not this thing is worth your money or not. So here are my thoughts on the Beta95x V2 HD. For the pros, I think it's a good value at $279.99 US with the extra pops and screws and 2 camera mounts that you get. Also, for capturing smooth video, I think the vibration isolation here is good. You know, it separates the clean and dirty sections. And if you looked at my flight where I showed you some of the FPV feed coming in, it was pretty clean, so I think they did a good job there. Although this is not a freestyle quad, I think it does a good job at light freestyle, things that you would do with a Cinewhoop, like split S's. I think it handles that quite well, and I was not getting any yaw washout. And I think that's attributed to the pusher design. I think it does a better job at preventing yaw washout. As far as the Nebula camera here, this is the version 2 of that, which is significantly better than the version 1. It's not as good as the DJI camera, but it is significantly better than analog cameras, and it gives you the confidence when you're flying through small gaps or playing around in tree canopies. I think the frame is robust for a Cinewhoop, and I did take a fairly hard crash following my friend who was on a sport bike, and it seemed to survive that quite well. Also, I think the flight times are reasonable. I was getting approximately 4 minutes of flight time with 450 milliamp hour 4S Tattoo battery. Lastly, I like the design because it supports both the Insta360 and Naked GoPro cameras, so I think that's a big asset. So moving on to the cons. Although the tune is fine out of the box, they are running 357. I think it could do better in prop wash handling if they would upgrade it to Betaflight 4.2 and then enable RPM filtering. I'm going to probably go ahead and do that. And again, the flight characteristics are fine out of the box, but I think it could be better if RPM filtering was enabled. As far as noise, the GemFan D63 tri-blade props, because of the bullnose design here, they are fairly loud, and I don't particularly like that. So I'm going to experiment with different prop types and see if I can get it to be a little quieter. Also, I noticed the throttle management is a little difficult, not impossible. You can still get smooth shots. I think if they would have gone with a motor with a wider stator, but not as tall, I think it would have been better for throttle management. Also, I think it would be nice if they would have included a buzzer. This is a smaller quad. If it gets lost in taller grass, if you're flying out in fields, I think it would have been nice if they would have added just a simple buzzer to this. It wouldn't have added a lot of weight. And then lastly, it's I guess a niggle. If you look here, they basically on the flight controller cover plate here, they just reused the camera mount for the V1 version of this quad. That's a little sketchy. I printed out a little TPU cover that is better, I think, and give it the flight controller electronics a little more protection. I think at a minimum, you probably should cover this with some tape, this hole, because if if you're landing on wet grass, you could blow the flight controller board. So I would consider that. So again, that's kind of a minor niggle, but at a minimum, again, I would cover that hole there. And if you have access to a printer, I'll go ahead and link one design below that you can print out. That is a TPU that has some landing legs on it, and it doesn't have this hole. So would I recommend this quad for purchase? If you are in the market for an FPV platform that will carry a Naked GoPro and you want FPV HD video, I definitely would say yes. If you already have the V1 version, I would say just buy the conversion kit. It's only $14.99, and so I think that's obviously a cheaper option to go. And then if you have an older 85X HD analog version even, you might consider the upgrade pusher conversion kit that they have. I think it's close to the same price, a little cheaper even. So you might want to consider that if you have, again, one of the older 85X analog versions. So with that, I greatly appreciate you watching my channel.